She had spent 75 years navigating life with quiet resilience, surviving challenges that would have broken many, and nurturing her family with unwavering dedication. Every wrinkle on her face told a story of sacrifice and perseverance. Every crease in her hands a testament to labor and love. Her life had been one of devotion, of giving without expectation, of holding her family together through storms of hardship and fleeting moments of joy. Yet now, as she sat alone in her modest living room, the weight of her years pressed heavily upon her. The news had arrived not through a gentle conversation, not through an invitation or a card, but through whispers and announcements that cut deep. Her son, her only child, had married, and she had not been invited. She had heard about the wedding from a distant cousin, someone who did not realize the impact of their casual remark. The revelation hit her with the force of a gale, leaving her reeling, breathless, and filled with a mixture of confusion, hurt, and disbelief. For decades, she had been the silent architect of her family's life. She had celebrated every milestone, comforted through every loss, guided with wisdom earned through experience. Every sleepless night, every worry over illness, every quiet sacrifice had been made with the assumption that love was a bond strong enough to withstand distance, time, and misunderstandings. She had believed, perhaps naively, that the foundation she built could never be so easily overlooked. She recalled the small moments that defined their bond. Teaching him to ride his first bicycle, holding his hand on the first day of school, wiping tears from scraped knees, whispering encouragement during moments of self-doubt. She had been there for every triumph and every failure, her presence unwavering, her love unquestioned. And yet, none of it seemed to matter now. None of it had earned her a place at one of the most significant moments of his adult life. Her mind replayed the countless times she had imagined his wedding day. She had envisioned a gathering where family and friends came together, a day of laughter, love, and celebration. She had pictured herself standing by his side, offering a quiet smile of pride, perhaps even shedding a tear as she witnessed the start of a new chapter in his life. But the reality, she realized, was far different. She had been omitted, erased, excluded without explanation. The pain was compounded by the lack of closure, the silence that had filled the space between them. She had called him, of course, attempting to mask her hurt behind careful words and measured tones, only to be met with vague excuses, hurried conversations, or worse, no response at all. Each unanswered call, each deflection, each moment of uncertainty acted like a tiny fracture in the fragile sense of belonging she had always held. The bond she had nurtured for decades now felt tenuous, as if it could snap at any moment. She tried to rationalize, telling herself that perhaps it was a misunderstanding, that maybe the wedding had been small and intimate, that intentions were not malicious. But the sting remained, a quiet, persistent ache that gnawed at her chest. How could a child, raised with care and devotion, choose to exclude the person who had given everything for him? How could years of love and effort be overlooked so completely, reduced to a mere footnote in the story of his life? Her home, once a place of comfort and warmth, now felt strangely empty. The familiar walls, adorned with photographs and mementos of family moments, seemed to echo her isolation. Each picture told a story she could no longer fully share. Each memory was tinged with quiet sorrow, a reminder that love alone could not guarantee acknowledgement. She wandered through her rooms, touching objects she had once cherished, feeling a growing sense of disconnection and solitude. Yet even in her grief, she could not abandon hope. She remembered the lessons life had taught her: resilience in the face of adversity, patience when confronted with uncertainty, and the enduring strength of love that refuses to yield, even when unreciprocated. She resolved with quiet determination that she would confront this hurt, that she would seek understanding, and that she would fight to reclaim her place in the life of her son. Her heart ached, but it was not defeated. She allowed herself to feel the full measure of her pain, to acknowledge the depth of her hurt and confusion that accompanied it. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the room, she made a silent promise to herself that she would face the challenge with courage, that she would demand recognition not out of pride, but out of the fundamental truth that love and family could not be so easily disregarded. In those quiet hours of reflection, she understood that the journey ahead would not be easy. It would require confrontation, patience, and an unwavering commitment to honesty. The path would be fraught with emotional turbulence, moments of anger, and the risk of further rejection. But she also knew that this challenge, as painful as it was, offered an opportunity to reaffirm the bonds of family, to reclaim the connection that had been threatened, and confront the unspoken truths that had long lain dormant. She sat by the window, watching the world outside continue its indifferent rhythm. Life went on, oblivious to the personal storm raging within her. But she felt a stirring of resolve, a spark of determination that would guide her through the coming days. The story of exclusion, of heartbreak, and of the quiet resilience of a mother's love was just beginning, and she was ready to face it head on, with every ounce of strength she had accumulated over 75 years. The morning sun filters through the thin curtains, casting soft golden light on a modest kitchen. She sits at the table with a cup of tea that has long since gone cold. The silence is broken only by the faint ticking of an old wall clock. She takes a slow sip, trying to gather the memories that weigh heavily on her mind. She remembers the day her son was born, the hospital room bright and sterile, filled with the anxious anticipation of new life. Holding him for the first time, she felt a rush of love so deep it shook her entire being. Every worry, every fear, every sleepless night she had endured before suddenly seemed insignificant compared to the tiny warmth in her arms. Raising him was not easy. There were days when exhaustion pressed down like a physical weight, when the endless laundry meals and doctor visits left her drained. She recalls one winter night when he had a high fever. She stayed by his side for hours, her hand on his little chest, whispering comfort and prayers, refusing to rest herself. Those were the nights that defined her as a mother, nights when her own needs vanished entirely into the care of another human being. She remembers teaching him to walk, to read, to ride a bike without training wheels. Every scraped knee, every tear shed, she attended with unwavering patience. When he first learned to ride a bike, she ran alongside him until he gained confidence. She could still hear his laughter, ringing clear and unguarded, a sound that once filled her days with joy. The years passed, and with them came victories and challenges alike. School performances, science projects, friendships won and lost. She celebrated each accomplishment, silently rejoicing in his successes, shielding him from the weight of her own disappointments. Every birthday, every achievement, she was there, always at the forefront, her presence a constant that he could rely on without question. Yet, as he grew older, something began to change. The boy who once clung to her hand now pulled away. Conversations became shorter, silences longer. Her advice was met with irritation rather than gratitude. She tried to understand, telling herself that independence was a part of growing up. Still, a knot of unease tightened in her chest whenever she sensed distance creeping between them. The memory of that first argument when he was 16 comes sharply into focus. A trivial disagreement over curfew escalated quickly. He stormed out of the room, slamming the door, and she sat in the empty kitchen, heart pounding, tears streaming silently. That night, she realized that parenting was not just about love and care. It was also about letting go, about standing by as they make choices, even if those choices hurt. She recalls later years when she tried to be present in his life despite his growing independence. She attended every school event she could, offered guidance during teenage troubles, and quietly ensured he had everything he needed to thrive. Each sacrifice, each moment of selflessness, she did without expectation of thanks. She believed love itself was enough. And then came adulthood. He moved away for college, then work. Visits became infrequent. Calls grew shorter. She tried not to take it personally, attributing it to the demands of adulthood. Still, each absence left a void that seemed to stretch wider with every passing year. She longed for the closeness they once shared, for the simplicity of laughter echoing through the house, for the reassurance that she still mattered. Then the wedding. The news of it reached her not from a joyful phone call, but from a casual mention by a distant relative. She had expected, perhaps naively, to be among the first to know, to be invited in the way any loving parent might hope. Instead, she learned she was to be excluded entirely. She stared at the invitation, the realization burning like ice. After 75 years of love, guidance, and unwavering presence, she was considered irrelevant. Her mind replays the countless times she had quietly sacrificed for him, the sleepless nights, the tears, the moments she had held her own heartbreak to comfort him. All of it apparently meant nothing. The feeling of invisibility was overwhelming, almost unbearable. She felt not only pain, but a deep, hollow sense of erasure. In those quiet moments of reflection, she asked herself questions she knew she might never find answers to. Had she done something wrong? Could she have been a better mother? Was there a moment she had failed, unknowingly, that led to this exclusion? The questions haunted her, spinning through her mind in relentless circles. She thinks of the times he had smiled at her, hugged her, called her mom with tenderness in his voice. How could that same child now act as if she did not exist? It is not anger alone she feels. It is a profound sorrow, a grief that pierces deep into the bones. This is a grief of being forgotten by someone who once depended entirely on you, a grief that feels both unfair and inescapable. She takes a slow, steadying breath, trying to anchor herself to the present. Outside, life continues in its ordinary rhythm, unaware of the turmoil inside her home. She thinks of her own parents, long gone, and wonders if they had ever felt this kind of quiet abandonment. Perhaps it is a cycle, she thinks, a cycle of distance and unintentional pain passed down through generations. Yet, even in her pain, there is resilience. She remembers telling herself countless times, "You are still here, you are still alive, and your worth is not defined by another's recognition." She clings to this thought, fragile though it may be, as a lifeline amidst the sorrow. The struggle is internal, but she knows she must navigate it with dignity, with patience, and with the same quiet strength that carried her through every hardship of motherhood. And so, she sits in the morning light, alone yet not defeated. Her memories carry both joy and heartache. Her love for her son remains, complicated by hurt, but it has not vanished. The story is far from over, and the next chapters will reveal choices she must make, conversations she must face, and the unexpected truths about family, loyalty, and the power of forgiveness. The camera slowly pulls back from the kitchen window, showing the modest house in full, a small figure visible inside. She rises, moves to the window once more, gazing outward, contemplating the days to come. Life continues beyond her walls, but the journey of reconciliation, understanding, and self-discovery has only just begun. The days following the discovery of her son's wedding unfolded in a haze of quiet pain and restless thoughts. She found herself walking through her home almost automatically, touching objects and memories that once carried warmth but now seemed heavy with absence. Every picture, every keepsake, reminded her of a relationship that once defined her life, now strained and distant. She tried to call him. She rehearsed the words in her head countless times. "I heard about the wedding. I wish I had known. I would have loved to be there." Each time she dialed, her fingers hesitated over the keypad. What would she even say? Would he listen or dismiss her feelings as outdated, unnecessary, or burdensome? Eventually, she stopped trying. Each unanswered call was a small, silent blow that chipped away at her confidence and her sense of belonging. Her neighbors noticed a change in her demeanor. She had always been cheerful, warm, and willing to help anyone in need. Now, she moved through the world with careful, measured steps, as if afraid that any sudden action might shatter the fragile balance of her emotions. She spoke less, smiled less, laughed less. Inside, a storm of emotions raged: sadness, anger, confusion, and a desperate longing for connection. The invitation she never received seemed to haunt her. She would occasionally hold it in her hands, turning it over, imagining how the ceremony unfolded without her. She pictured the laughter of friends, the congratulations of family members, the way he might have smiled as he exchanged vows. The image brought tears, but also a question that she could not silence. Why had he excluded her? Was it deliberate, or had he simply failed to think? One afternoon, she decided to visit a close friend who had known her son since childhood. Sitting together over tea, she poured out her heart, recounting the long years of care, the sacrifices, the love she had invested. Her friend listened patiently, nodding, offering words of comfort and understanding. Sometimes, the friend said, children make choices that hurt us, not because they don't love us, but because they see life differently. But your love, your presence, that never disappears. Despite the comfort, the void remained. She remembered instances when her son had dismissed her advice or ignored her concerns. Minor conflicts that seemed inconsequential at the time now took on greater significance, as though each slight had built a foundation for this moment of exclusion. The cumulative weight of decades of subtle distance, coupled with the shocking rejection of not being invited, created a complex tapestry of grief and bewilderment. She recalled family gatherings from recent years. He would smile at others, engage easily in conversation, laugh at jokes, but her presence seemed optional, almost inconvenient. At first, she told herself she was imagining it, that perhaps her perception was clouded by age or sensitivity. But over time, the pattern became undeniable. She was no longer central in the life of the person she had devoted herself to nurturing. Her thoughts turned to the wedding day itself. She pictured the decorations, the guests, the joy surrounding the event, and she felt a sharp pang in her chest. A question repeated itself relentlessly. Had he forgotten all she had done? Had the love and effort of 75 years been invisible to him? The thought was almost unbearable. In the evenings, she would sit by the window, gazing at the lights of distant homes, imagining other families celebrating together, feeling included, feeling valued. Each image was a reminder of what she had lost. She thought of her own parents, who had passed on long ago, and the emptiness of having no one to turn to for guidance in this time of emotional turmoil. The isolation amplified her grief, making each day feel longer, colder, and heavier. She began keeping a small journal, writing down her memories, her frustrations, her longing for reconciliation. Writing became a quiet therapy, a way to articulate thoughts she could not voice aloud. She wrote about sleepless nights, about every scraped knee she had cared for, every triumph she had quietly celebrated, every time she had prioritized his needs over her own. The pages filled with love and sorrow, blending together into a record of a life given selflessly, yet met with profound absence in return. Her neighbors occasionally offered casual invitations to gatherings, which she politely declined. She was not ready to be around celebrations where she felt invisible. Her pride and sense of dignity demanded that she hold herself apart until she could face the emotional turmoil with greater strength. She knew she could not force her son to acknowledge her, but she could maintain her own sense of self-respect. And yet, despite the hurt, there was still a spark of hope. She wondered, could a conversation still repair the rift? Could her son be reminded of the love that had shaped him, the bond that had once been unbreakable? The questions were unanswered, but they lingered, a faint light in the midst of darkness, urging her to hold on, to continue, to wait for the moment when understanding might be possible. Evenings became a time for reflection. She would sit quietly, listening to the distant sounds of life outside, imagining her son going about his day, surrounded by people she barely knew, participating in a celebration that excluded her. She felt a mixture of sorrow and resignation, knowing that she could not relive the past, could not change the choices already made. She could only prepare for what was next and for the conversations, confrontations, or reconciliations that might one day come. She thought about forgiveness, the complex dance between pride and humility. Could she forgive the exclusion, the pain, the silent message that she did not matter in that crucial moment? She did not yet have an answer, but she knew she wanted to try. The love she had invested over decades was too deep to discard entirely, even in the face of apparent rejection. The days continued in quiet contemplation, each one a mixture of grief, nostalgia, and cautious hope. She began to recognize the strength within herself, the resilience that carried her through every hardship in her life. Though the absence of her son's acknowledgement was a wound that throbbed constantly, she realized that her value and dignity were not defined solely by his recognition. And so, she prepared herself mentally and emotionally for the next step, confronting the reality of her son's choices, addressing the unspoken tension, and finding a way to navigate the delicate path between love, disappointment, and reconciliation. The story of exclusion was only beginning, and she knew that the true test of family, loyalty, and understanding lay ahead. The camera pulls back slowly, showing her small figure sitting at the kitchen table, the journal open before her, pen poised in hand. The soft glow of afternoon light filters through the window, casting long shadows. Though alone, She is not defeated. Her story continues, and the next chapter promises confrontation, revelation, and the possibility of healing. The evening was quiet, yet heavy with anticipation. She had received a tentative call from her son, the first in weeks. He suggested they meet, and though the tone was cautious, she could sense the unspoken tension that hung between them. She agreed, her heart a mixture of hope and dread. They met at a small cafe, a neutral space that neither had claimed as territory. She arrived early, sitting at a corner table, hands folded over her handbag, eyes tracing every movement around her while her thoughts raced. She remembered the countless mornings she had guided him to school, the nights she had stayed awake to ensure he was safe, and the years she had poured herself into shaping his life. Could he truly have forgotten all of that? When he arrived, he looked different. Not just older, but distant, cautious, almost offensive. He greeted her with a brief nod, avoiding her eyes. The warmth she had once known in his smile was missing, replaced by a careful politeness that felt foreign and cold. She spoke first, her voice steady though her chest felt heavy. "I received no invitation to your wedding. I heard about it from someone else. I need to understand why." He shifted in his seat, hands fidgeting, voice hesitant. "Mom, it wasn't intentional. It was a small ceremony, and I didn't think you'd want to come." She blinked, disbelief mixing with rising anger. "Not intentional? You didn't think I'd want to celebrate your most important day? After everything I've done for you? Do you realize what it feels like to be erased from your own son's life?" His jaw tightened. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I thought it would be simpler this way." She leaned forward, her eyes piercing. "Simpler for whom? Not for me. You made a choice to exclude me. That's not simplicity. That's rejection. After 75 years of love and sacrifice, you chose to act as if I don't exist." A long silence followed. The cafe noise filled the gap, but between them, the tension was palpable. He looked down, avoiding her gaze, fidgeting with a sugar packet. She waited, letting her words sink in. She wanted him to feel, even for a moment, the depth of her pain. "I don't understand," he finally muttered, his voice low, uncertain. "I thought you'd be proud. I didn't know it would hurt you this much." Her hands clenched in her lap, and her voice wavered with a mix of sorrow and frustration. Proud? Proud doesn't mean erasing someone's existence. Love doesn't mean pretending someone doesn't matter when the world is celebrating. I devoted my entire life to you, and yet when it came to the moment that should have mattered the most, I was invisible. He swallowed hard, the weight of her words settling over him like a sudden storm. I didn't realize. I see now. I wasn't thinking. I wasn't considering how it would affect you." She shook her head slowly, tears welling in her eyes. "It's not about thinking. It's about feeling. You acted without empathy. You acted as if all those years, all that care, all that love could be dismissed without consequence. That is what hurts the most." For a moment, he said nothing. She could see the conflict in his eyes, a mixture of guilt, confusion, and something she hoped might be understanding. The silence stretched, filled with years of unspoken words, unexpressed emotions, an invisible weight of relationship strained, almost breaking. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. "Do you even know what it feels like to be 75 and left out of your child's life? To realize that the person you raised, nurtured, and sacrificed everything for chooses to exclude you." He swallowed again, and his voice was barely audible. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you like this." She leaned back, letting the words hang in the air. Forgiveness was not immediate, and the pain was still raw. But she recognized the first step. Recognition, however belated, was a beginning. "Words alone are not enough," she said quietly. "Apologies are not enough. Actions speak louder than words. I need to see that you understand, truly understand, what it means to leave someone out of their own child's life." He nodded, his face pale, the realization of his actions settling in. "I know. I don't know how to fix it, but I want to try. I want to make it right." She watched him, measuring sincerity against years of disappointment. Part of her wanted to rage, to retreat, to shut the door forever. But another part, the part that had nurtured, guided, and loved him unconditionally, felt the faint stirrings of hope. Perhaps reconciliation was possible. Perhaps understanding could be reached. The cafe continued its rhythm around them, oblivious to the tension at the corner table. She breathed slowly, holding back tears, feeling both exhaustion and a flicker of possibility. The confrontation had begun. The truth had been spoken, and though the road ahead would not be easy, at least it had begun. She stood to leave, gathering her bag. "We will need to talk more," she said, her voice calm but firm. "This is only the beginning. I hope you are ready to listen, really listen, because I am not leaving until I know you understand." He nodded again, quietly, humbled, and perhaps for the first time, aware of the depth of her pain. She walked out of the cafe into the cool evening air. The sky was painted with fading light, a mixture of orange and purple, signaling the end of the day and the beginning of a new chapter. The confrontation had been difficult, the emotions raw, but it had happened. A door had opened, even if only slightly, and the story of mother and son, of love, pain, and the possibility of reconciliation was moving forward. The days following their first confrontation passed in a haze of reflection and quiet anticipation. She found herself replaying every word, every glance, every subtle shift in his tone, analyzing what had been said and unsaid. The cafe meeting had opened the door to dialogue, but it had also revealed the depth of the distance between them. She realized that reconciliation, if it were to happen, would require patience, courage, and unwavering honesty. She spent her mornings tending to small routines, as if the act of caring for her home could anchor her amidst the emotional turbulence. She brewed her tea slowly, arranged flowers in a vase, and looked out the window at the life moving beyond her walls. Children played on the street. Neighbors greeted each other. Couples laughed together. She watched them silently, feeling both longing and determination. She wanted to be part of her son's life again, not just as a shadow or a memory, but as an active presence, deserving of recognition and respect. Her thoughts turned to the words she had spoken in the cafe. She had been firm, unyielding in expressing her hurt, yet she had also left a path open for understanding. She remembered the flicker of guilt in his eyes, the way his hands trembled slightly, the hesitation in his voice when he acknowledged the pain he had caused. She clung to that moment, knowing that recognition, however belated, was the first step toward repair. She decided it was time to reach out again, this time with intention and clarity. She wrote a letter, not one of accusation, but one of expression. She detailed her feelings, the sacrifices she had made, the moments she had cherished, and the impact of being excluded. She expressed a desire for reconnection, for communication, and for a relationship where her presence was valued. Each word was chosen carefully, balanced between honesty and compassion. Days later, her son arrived at her home, unannounced but expected. She welcomed him with measured calm, no anger in her tone, only an openness that invited dialogue. He sat across from her at the kitchen table, hands folded, eyes lowered. There was a heaviness in the air, the weight of past misunderstandings pressing upon them, but also a tentative hope, fragile yet present. "I read your letter," he said finally, voice low but steady. "I understand now, better than before. I see the pain I caused, and I regret it deeply." She nodded, absorbing his words, sensing their sincerity. "Understanding is the first step," she replied softly. "But it is not the only step. Actions must follow. Words alone cannot repair years of absence and hurt. I need to feel that my place in your life matters, not just be told it does." He swallowed, nodding again, the tension in his shoulders gradually easing. "I know. I will try to show you. I want to make things right, even if it takes time. I want you in my life, not as someone in the background, but as my mother, as family." Her heart tightened, a mixture of relief and lingering caution. She had dreamed of this conversation for weeks, but reality was more complex than fantasy. Reconciliation would not happen overnight. Trust, once strained, required careful rebuilding step by step. Over the following weeks, they began to reestablish contact. He visited regularly, and they shared meals together, talked about his life, his work, his thoughts. She listened as he spoke, sometimes interjecting, sometimes allowing silence to fill the space, letting the conversation breathe naturally. Each interaction no matter how small, felt like a bridge being rebuilt, one plank at a time. Yet challenges remained. Old wounds resurfaced occasionally, misunderstandings flared, and the ghosts of past neglect haunted their moments together. She felt the sting of old memories, the echoes of nights spent worrying, the ache of years where love was given freely but sometimes unacknowledged. Still, each challenge became an opportunity for dialogue, for clarity, for the reaffirmation of connection. She also began to reflect on her own expectations. Had she projected her desires too forcefully? Had she assumed that her sacrifices guaranteed acknowledgement? These questions did not diminish her hurt, but they allowed her to approach reconciliation with empathy, understanding that her son's perspective, shaped by years of independence and distance, was different from her own. In quiet moments, she would sit by the window, writing in her journal, capturing the nuances of their renewed relationship. She noted the moments of joy, the subtle gestures of care, the conversations that revealed understanding and mutual respect. She began to recognize that reconciliation was not a singular event, but an ongoing process, one that required patience, presence, and commitment from both sides. The turning point came unexpectedly during a simple afternoon visit. They were cooking together, preparing a modest meal, laughing over spilled ingredients and shared memories. In that moment, the tension of weeks dissolved, replaced by a tangible warmth, a rekindling of connection that felt fragile but real. She realized then that reconciliation was not about erasing the past, but about building anew, acknowledging hurt while choosing to nurture love. By the end of Block 5, she felt a cautious optimism. The bridge between mother and son was under construction, strengthened by honesty, effort, and mutual recognition. The story had moved from confrontation to tentative rebuilding, laying the groundwork for deeper understanding, emotional revelations, and the possibility of true healing. The camera lingers on her face, eyes reflecting both the weight of the past and the hope of the present. The evening light softens, bathing the kitchen in warmth. She breathes deeply, feeling a mixture of exhaustion, relief, and anticipation. The journey is far from complete, but the path forward is clearer. Reconnection is underway, and the next chapters promise challenges, revelations, and ultimately, transformation. The morning sun streamed to the curtains, casting sharp lines of light across the kitchen floor. She felt a mixture of anticipation and apprehension. Today, her son was coming over, not just for a casual visit, but to discuss something important, a conversation he had been postponing for weeks. She sensed a weight in the air, the culmination of unresolved feelings and lingering tensions that had been simmering beneath the surface for decades. When he arrived, his face was drawn, a mixture of nervousness and determination. He stepped inside, hesitating slightly before speaking. "Mom, there's something I need to tell you about the wedding and about us." Her heart raced. She motioned for him to sit, her own hands trembling slightly despite her calm exterior. "I'm listening," she said softly, trying to steady her voice. He took a deep breath, eyes downcast. "I didn't just make a mistake by not inviting you. I realized I've been keeping secrets. Things I should have shared, things I was afraid you'd judge me for. I've been distant because I thought it would protect you, but I see now it only caused pain." She leaned forward, her gaze intense but patient. "Pain was already here, long before you realized. Hiding from me, keeping things secret, it doesn't protect anyone, it only divides." He nodded slowly, a shadow of guilt crossing his face. "I've been making decisions without considering you. I wanted to do things my way, thinking I was independent. But independence doesn't mean leaving you behind. I see that now." She could feel the tension in her chest, a mixture of relief and lingering frustration. It's not just about seeing it now. It's about what you do next. Words mean little without actions to back them up. I need to see that my place in your life matters, not just in theory, but in reality. He swallowed hard, his voice barely audible. "I want to make it right. I don't want to lose you. I want you to be part of my life, fully, not just as someone in the background." The atmosphere in the room shifted, a fragile truce forming. But beneath it lay the unresolved emotions of years past. The hurt, the misunderstandings, the subtle resentments that had grown silently over decades. The mother could feel the weight of those years pressing down on both of them. She wanted reconciliation, but she also knew that forgiveness would not come easily, not after so much pain. Suddenly, he hesitated, his eyes flicking toward the window, as if debating whether to continue. "There's more," he admitted finally. "During the wedding planning, there were disagreements between me and my spouse about inviting family. I thought I was protecting you from conflict, but I realize now I excluded you for the wrong reasons." Her chest tightened. This was the moment she had feared, hearing that her exclusion had not been accidental, but influenced by the opinions of others. She took a slow breath, trying to keep her composure. "Protecting me? By erasing me? Do you understand how that feels? That I was treated as if I didn't matter, as if my love and sacrifices meant nothing." He nodded, shame and regret etched into his face. "I understand. I realize that my actions, even if meant to protect, cause harm. I'm sorry. Truly." She felt a tear slip down her cheek, not just from the pain of the past, but from the intensity of this confrontation. "Apologies are a start," she said quietly, "but the bridge must be rebuilt. Trust, understanding, and consistent effort are what will heal this." He reached across the table, hesitating, then gently took her hand. The gesture was small, yet profound, symbolizing the first real connection after weeks of tension and unspoken resentment. "I want to try," he said softly. "I don't know how, but I want to make it right. I need you in my life." For the first time in weeks, she felt a flicker of hope. The confrontation had been raw, emotional, and painful, but it also opened the path toward healing. They spoke for hours, unpacking years of unspoken grievances, addressing misunderstandings, and acknowledging the pain they had both carried. She realized that reconciliation would not be instant, and trust would take time to rebuild. But the willingness to communicate honestly, to face the emotional turbulence together, was a turning point. For decades, they had been caught in patterns of avoidance and assumption. Now, they were breaking them. As evening approached, they shared a quiet moment of laughter, recalling a memory from his childhood, a minor mishap involving a bicycle and a scraped knee that had ended in tears and laughter. The moment was fleeting, yet it symbolized a new beginning, a reminder that even after years of distance and hurt, bonds could be repaired. She reflected on the journey so far, the confrontation, the courage to speak honestly, the vulnerability they both displayed. She understood now that love was not merely about presence or sacrifice, but about openness, communication, and a willingness to confront pain head-on. By the end of the day, she felt a cautious optimism. The emotional storm had not passed completely, but the path forward was clearer. Her son had recognized the depth of her pain and expressed genuine remorse. She had voiced her hurt and set the terms for rebuilding their relationship. The bridge, fragile as it was, had begun to take shape. She watched him leave that evening, a mixture of sorrow and hope in her chest. The journey of reconciliation was ongoing, filled with challenges, revelations, and the promise of renewed connection. Yet for the first time in a long while, she felt that the possibility of true healing was within reach. The days following their intense confrontation were quieter, yet filled with new energy, a fragile, hopeful rhythm that had been missing for so long. She began to notice subtle changes in her son's behavior. A phone call in the morning, a message checking in during the day, small gestures that conveyed attention and care. It was not dramatic, nor did it erase the years of distance, but was enough to signal a willingness to rebuild. She reflected on the journey, from the shock of being excluded from his wedding, to the raw confrontation at the cafe, to the heartfelt conversations in her home. Each step had been both painful and illuminating. She realized that true reconciliation required courage, patience, and vulnerability on both sides. Words alone were not sufficient. Actions and consistent effort were what would truly mend the bond. One afternoon, they decided to revisit a familiar place from his childhood, the park where she had first taught him to ride a bicycle. The familiar paths, the trees, the swings, all seemed to hold echoes of laughter and innocence. She watched him with a mixture of pride and tenderness, remembering the little boy who had once clung to her hand, full of curiosity and trust. Now he was a man, flawed yet sincere, ready to acknowledge the mistakes of the past and create a new chapter. They sat on a bench together, the sunlight filtering through the leaves. The air was warm but gentle, carrying the scent of fresh grass and autumn leaves. She spoke first, her voice soft but steady. "It hasn't been easy, and I know it won't be perfect. But seeing you here, willing to face the past and move forward, gives me hope." He nodded, his gaze fixed on her. "I've realized so much over the past weeks. I see the love you've given me, the sacrifices, the patience. I don't want to take that for granted again. I want to be present, to show you that you matter to me." She smiled faintly, a mixture of relief and lingering emotion. It's not just about showing for a moment. It's about being present consistently with honesty and care. That is what rebuilds trust, what rebuilds family. They spoke for hours, sharing memories and laughter, revisiting moments that had been overshadowed by distance and misunderstanding. They acknowledged the pain that had been caused, but also the love that had persisted despite it. Slowly, carefully, the gaps that had formed over decades began to narrow. She noticed a change within herself, too. The anger, the sorrow, and the sense of exclusion still lingered, but they were tempered now by understanding and a renewed sense of agency. She realized that her love for him was not diminished by past hurts, and that forgiveness was not just a gift to him, but a balm for her own heart. Days turned into weeks, and with each encounter, the bond strengthened. Simple acts, a shared meal, a phone call, a spontaneous visit, became symbols of connection and commitment. She learned to navigate the delicate balance of expressing her needs without judgment, and he learned to listen, acknowledge, and act with care. One evening, as they prepared a small dinner together, she paused, looking at him with a mixture of pride and quiet wonder. "I never thought we'd come this far after everything," she said softly. He reached for her hand, gripping it gently. "Neither did I, but I'm grateful. I've learned how easily love can be taken for granted, and how important it is to nurture it every day. I want to do better for both of us." Tears welled in her eyes, but this time they were not only a sorrow. They were relief, understanding, and renewed hope. The journey had been long, fraught with pain, but it had led to a place of honesty, connection, and mutual respect. She reflected on the lessons of this experience. That love, even when tested by time and distance, can endure. That reconciliation requires courage from both parties. That acknowledgement of pain and effort toward understanding are essential to repairing fractured relationships. Most importantly, she realized that family is not merely about presence or blood. It is about care, recognition, and the choice to show up for one another consistently and sincerely. As the sun set, casting a warm glow through the kitchen window, they sat together in quiet companionship. The past was not forgotten, nor were the wounds fully healed, but the path forward was clear. They had found a way to honor the love that had always existed, to acknowledge the mistakes of the past, and to embrace the potential of the future. The camera lingers on their hands intertwined on the table, a small yet powerful symbol of connection. Outside, life continues in its ordinary rhythm. But within these walls, a story of reconciliation, resilience, and enduring love had reached a poignant resolution. And so, after years of struggle, misunderstanding, and hurt, mother and son began to navigate their relationship anew. The journey of rebuilding trust and understanding would continue, but the first steps had been taken. The story closes not with perfection, but with hope, commitment, and the profound realization that love, when nurtured and honored, can overcome even the deepest divides. The light fades softly, leaving a lingering sense of warmth, closure, and quiet triumph. Their story, though filled with trials, serves as a testament to the enduring power of family, forgiveness, and the courage to rebuild bonds that seemed lost.